Dear students, it is the second video for the week 16, lecture 31. In this video, I'm going to talk about the nature of the Chinese Revolution. In the first video, we simply reviewed the biography and landmark events in the life of greatest Chinese leader and philosopher Mao Zedong. Indeed, West has made extraordinary bulging effect, extraordinary impact on the political systems, social setups of the entire world. Although China is one of the ancient civilizations, had distinct culture, tradition, Eastern values, clear, all this. But just like the people of subcontinent and the people of the Far East Asia, Chinese also came under the serious threat and holding of the European nations. In 16th century, European nations like Portugal and Spain and especially France and England and like this, they captured most of the parts of the China and established their trade centers. Chinese people fought for the freedom and lodged war against this imperialism, this colonialism, and they fought three major wars. 1839, the War of Opium, 1851 to 1864, Taiping War or treason or revolution, whereas in 1899 the Boxer War. Chinese got succeeded in, but in 1911 Dr. Sun Yat-sen Dr. Sun Yat-sen means toppled the king of China and established a democratic state. In 1920, General Chiang Kai-shek established Kuomintang party and promoted it. In the same time, in 1921, Chinese Communist Party was established by Mao Zedong and his fellows. In the start, Kuomintang and Communist Party both agreed for the national interest and they started working together and they shared the shoulders for the national integrity. But in 1926, both the parties had very grave differences and these differences turned into serious quarrels and fighting. The reason actually was that the Mao Zedong want to establish communist ideas, wanted to establish the system like Russians have established in their country, where the laborers had the power, whereas Kuomintang wished to reinstate and rejuvenile or restructure the capitalist way of life that was much liked by the landlords, by the Western world, especially Americans, Britain, France, Germany. I mean, the Westerns didn't want that another huge country like China may be the part of Russia, and later on they both become ally and gave a serious threat to their capitalist things. Thereby, they were in support of the Kuomintang. But a huge warfare started among the both. Sometimes Mao Zedong's party had serious defeats, but finally in the last war, Mao Zedong won, and Kuomintang had to refuge in Taiwan. That is that was called Formosa Island. Uh, some people think that Chinese Revolution in its nature is similar to Russian Revolution, but the reasons why in China the revolution was welcomed was different. Some are the similar ones because in Russia the landlords, czar, kings, and queens, industrialists, they had more wealth, and the peasants and the people didn't have. They were maltreated. Their wages were less, and there were no distinct position. Fine, and this whole situation is well expressed by Anton Chekhov's novels. Fine, but similar in China, that the people were poor, the most of the fate of public being controlled by the warlords and the landlords. Fine, and there were no more income sources. Chinese had indulged into opium. Chinese used to be the worst ever nation on the planet. Fine, so this was really the problem with the China. But there were the students, there were the farmers, education people. They welcomed Mao Zedong in many ways. Uh, Second more important factor, that the Western imperialist practices also forced and promoted the political sense among the people of China. Second, and Soviet government, the communist government in Russia, they took the advantage of this situation, and they supported the communist people. In the beginning they were quite less, but with the charismatic personality of people like Mao Zedong, the students, laborers, peasants, a huge number of the lot from these sections and sectors involved in the revolution, and they all wanted to eradicate the political come social injustice. They want to destroy the imperialistic lifestyle and the Western capturing. They didn't want to establish the roots of the Western political systems in them, and they remained quite successful in it. You find it that no Western practice is more made in China, whereas we people, after having our uh, liberty from the England, we we didn't learn any positive lesson. Even we couldn't establish our own constitution, and we only 1935 constitution and all the efforts of the British utilized to control the country. However, India to some extent and in larger extent established Indian nationalism, and they made it. Anyway, we're coming to the point. Uh, in August in August 1945, when finally the Japanese control over China was over and communists won, and in September 1949, Peking was announced as the capital and China was announced as a democratic state. At this precise occasion, Mao Zedong expressed that we have a feeling in common that our work will be written down in the history of mankind. It will say, the Chinese people, 1/4 of the humanity, from this day forth stood up. 100 years of the foreign aggression, corrupt and weak internal government have come to an end, and the Chinese, inspired by the remarkable spirit of unity, have stood behind the government that the People's Political Consultative Conference has set up. For the first time in the long eventful history of China, a strong central government whose command is respected throughout the length and the breadth of the land has been established. The emergence of New China, strong, unified, and determined, is therefore a factor of capital importance in the history of mankind. In short, the different factors, the internal factors, political inferiority and foreign dominance, internal corruption, and Russians' support altogether dished up the Chinese revolution, and now this revolution is knocking at the doors of the world with its latest approach. Thank you.